low network connection. God. I was afraid of this. Good evening. We had a little internet snafu there. I was concerned about that primarily, other than anything else. I want to welcome everyone this evening. I am Doug Wilson, a Democratic candidate for Congress from Ohio's 12th Congressional District. We're trying something different with this live stream. It's winter, and roads can turn hazardous very quickly. We are also in the middle of a very severe flu outbreak, and people can be contagious without even being symptomatic, so we can avoid that. I want to thank you for tuning in this evening, and as we get going here, there are no real rules, but there are some guidelines. I want to assure everyone that for the sensitivity of all who may be watching and may watch in the future after the live stream ends, that disrespectful, hateful speech will not be tolerated. Right up there is how you can submit your questions. You can also take live phone calls. Before I go any further, I want to put out a couple of thank yous to my campaign treasurer, Pat, whose assistance has been invaluable, to Greg Colvin, media director, who has been very helpful in setting up the website, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, and to Linda, who will be answering telephone calls live, because if you want to ask a live question on the phone, we have to have your permission to do that, because this is also being recorded for viewing later, and we don't want anyone to feel that their privacy or their rights are being infringed. So if you want to call in live, phone number's right up there, and that's the only screening that will take place, is to acquire your permission to actually broadcast your voice as you ask your question and I answer it. If you are watching the stream and submit a question, it will scroll across my screen and I'll be able to address your question here in real time. I started this campaign following the 2016 elections, primarily because I didn't feel that the people of Ohio's 12th Congressional District were being well represented, although the representative at the time, Mr. Pat Tiberi, had just run for and been elected to his 9th term in Congress. He has since resigned from Congress midway through the current term. That has left our district here in Ohio in a bit of a quandary. We will be facing a dual primary in May. There will be 2 actual ballot sections for selecting candidates, whether you ask for a Republican ballot, an independent ballot, or a Democratic ballot. And so you can actually vote for me twice and do it legally. One ballot section will deal with the remainder of the current term in Congress. That special election will be held in August for the remainder of the term, which runs out January 3rd of next year. The other ballot section will deal with the full term, which will begin January 3rd of next year and run for 2 years, a full 2-year term. Now, I've already filed for the full term. And inasmuch as Congressman Teaberry submitted his notice of resignation in October, but didn't tell Governor Kasich the date until just a few weeks ago, that has created a rather short window of opportunity for all the candidates to gather nominating petition signatures for the partial term. All those are due to be filed February 7th. It's a bit of a complicated process, and it's going to be a complicated ballot, and I urge everyone to read their ballots every time they vote carefully, because ballot language can be tricky. If you want to know more about me, I'm not going to take up a lot of your time here this evening with that, because there are some other things that I would like us to be talking about. But I would encourage you to check our webpage, which is www.dougwilson4ohio.com. There's a lot of information there. There's a bio, which explains who I am, where I've been, what I've been doing. There's a section on values, which explains how I feel about issues that are important to me, and I think important to many of you. There is a section on issues, which breaks down issues of concern such as irresponsible spending from Congress, the state of education and the cost of education to our families, the state of health care, which is a very big concern of mine inasmuch as I have been a respiratory care practitioner since 1973, and I am still actively working in hospital on a part-time, semi-retired basis. The news section has announcements of upcoming events, and the Get Involved section on the web page lets people actually check on the status of your right to vote, your registration to vote. If you need to register to vote, you can do that through the website. And it also has a section, where you can get involved in the campaign. If you'd like to volunteer, if you're going to be at an event and want to take pictures, great, we can use that. If you take video, great, we can use that. If as the weather warms up and the campaign steps up, you want to knock on some doors in your neighborhood or host a neighborhood event, let us know through that Get Involved section, and we will love to talk to you about all those opportunities and others. And finally, last but not least, there is a section where donations can be made through ActBlue, which is a secure service for candidates and their donors. And I certainly would appreciate financial support. We are a grassroots effort. Most of the funding to this point has been personal funds and donations from friends, family, and other concerned citizens. And I want to tell you all, if you've made a donation, it is much appreciated. And I want to assure you that not a single penny will be wasted. So why did I choose to run for Congress? I'm 66 years old, but there's a lot going on in our country that I find very disturbing. Monday evening, I attended a town hall meeting for another candidate as a show of solidarity. Speaking of other candidates, there are currently, I believe, 7 Democrats who are seeking your support and your vote, and I'm one. As I said, I started in November of 2016. I filed my nominating petition following the election in 2017, which was the earliest that the state of Ohio would accept that. And we'll be filing for the partial term very soon. All of these people, and the Republican candidates as well, are people that I urge you all to examine, attend an event, check out their web pages. The more informed you are, the better position you will be in to cast your ballot in a meaningful way for a candidate who reflects your views, your opinions, your concerns, and who wants to do the job of representing you, your concerns, and your values. Part of the reason I'm running is the former holder of the seat held very few town halls. Between 2011 and the 2016 elections, he held one town hall, and it was not even in Ohio's 12th congressional district. He was busy holding fundraising speeches and raising campaign funds. That's what the national parties urge all incumbents to do. I don't think that's right. I think the responsibility of elected officials is to be available to their constituents, to meet regularly with their constituents in person or in this format here, to take phone calls, to answer emails, to listen to the people who have selected them to represent them. And that's what I want to do for the people of Ohio 12, for all people of Ohio's 12th district. I speak my mind and my beliefs. It's not always popular. It's not always necessarily politically correct because there's a lot of divisiveness about being politically correct or not correct enough on this topic or too correct on that topic. And what I would urge everyone to do is search your hearts and find those issues and concerns that speak directly to you and affect your family and your friends and neighbors. Tuesday night, I did not watch the President's State of the Union message. I was at an event in Columbus where we were effectively and symbolically saying goodbye to former Representative Pat Tiberi. He never attended any of the town halls. He seldom met with any constituents. And he didn't show up Tuesday, and we didn't expect him to. But I did spend about 3.5 hours yesterday watching the President's State of the Union message and taking copious notes. I've got 4 pages of them here. There were some things that were said with which I can agree. There were some things said during the State of the Union message with which I cannot agree and won't. They don't reflect my values or I believe the values of most people in the middle class, most workers in this country. I kind of viewed the State of the Union message with mixed feelings. I, in the past, have looked forward to the State of the Union addresses from our presidents to hear their visions and their hopes and their goals for our country going forward. I heard a little of that when I reviewed the speech but I didn't hear a lot. Most of what I heard was really like a campaign rally full of platitudes and campaign slogans, and that making America great again for all Americans is a righteous vision. That we are in a new American moment, a time for you to dream and achieve anything. One of the things that troubled me most was the portion dealing with the Dreamers, which was a big bone of contention in Congress that actually contributed to a brief shutdown of Congress and the government. Pillar number 1, as stated by the president, was a path for almost 2 million people who were brought here in their youth by their parents and didn't have proper documentation, and to provide a path going forward for them if they met certain educational requirements, certain job requirements, for them to follow a path towards full citizenship. Linda and I have a friend who is currently a school teacher. She came to this country years ago from Bosnia during a civil war there. It has taken her over 20 years to attain naturalized citizenship status. And we celebrated that with her in the not too distant past. Every time she happened to move or relocate, she had to start the process all over, so it's not an easy process. But that is pillar 1 of the 4 pillars of the proposed immigration policies. Pillar 2 is to secure the border. That also was a campaign pledge from the president. Securing the border will cost billions, if not trillions of dollars. There are already miles of border fence, and if you follow it all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, you'll see that the fence itself actually goes into the ocean in San Diego. And it is so secure that all one would need to do is to swim out a little ways in the ocean and swim back in and get around the physical barrier. Physical barrier is, by all estimations of Border Patrol security forces, not going to be very effective. It will slow people trying to enter into the country by a matter of minutes. We have other technologies that we can use to surveil the border. We could create jobs by hiring additional border security. But I think there are methods to secure the border that don't involve building a physical barrier that may be of questionable effectiveness and require ongoing maintenance. Pillar 3 of the immigration policy is to end the visa lottery and to instead issue visas for temporary residency status based on educational requirements and job skills. And Pillar 4 was stated as ending chain migration. And you may have seen some commercials on TV, they're starting to run now, that list chain migration as a great threat to our security, that someone who gets into this country can then invite anyone in their family to come and join them, and that's just not the case. A naturalized citizen can have immediate family brought over, but it's a little more involved and a lot less scary than the commercials that are being aired to whip up support for this. One other thing that I was very concerned about was that our nation is in the grips of an increasing opioid addiction problem. In the last year for which full statistics are available, which was 2016, over 64,000 people lost their lives because of opioid addiction. That's more than the total number of service people we lost during the entire Vietnam War. And that's about all that was said about the opioid addiction and crisis, which is what it has been labeled by the president. But nothing has been addressed on how to deal with it. I find that as a healthcare worker who deals with overdose cases in our emergency rooms and even in the public restrooms of our hospital, I find that very disturbing, because coupled with that is the fact that the current Congress, encouraged by the current president, has been chipping away at health care in this country at a time when more and more people are needing health care. Elimination of the individual mandate tax, if one cannot prove that they have health insurance, is something that they applauded themselves for. I would rather see them applauding themselves for actually providing health care for all people in this country. We are among the few nations in the world that does not provide health care for its citizens. And that's something that we really need to examine as our population ages. Veterans and their service were addressed, and rightfully so. But my view is that we are a nation of people in service to one another. I work in a hospital. Linda is a school teacher. The people who collect our trash every week provide a service that is needed to preserve the health and welfare of the people in our neighborhood. Every person, every job has value, worth, and dignity. And that's something we should be celebrating. Another concern that wasn't addressed was the cost of higher education. It's very difficult in our country for families to provide the basic needs for themselves, their children, and for the future education of those children. In future, I'd like to address that, but quite frankly, in a nutshell, we need to deal with that better. I think a way we can deal with it is to provide a program of national service on a voluntary basis where people, when they graduate high school, can enter the military or the Peace Corps or other community service programs. And for each year they spend in service in the military or community service programs, can get a year's tuition credit at a public university a technical or trade school, and therefore get started in their adult lives without dragging around tens of thousands of dollars of debt for education or technical or trade skills training. That wasn't even touched on in the State of the Union address. Those were my main takeaways from the State of the Union. And there's one more thing, and that is the infrastructure. It was mentioned that our infrastructure needs repaired and maintenance, and yes, it does. Our highways are crumbling. Our bridges are not safe. It was stated by the president that it'd be nice to put $1.5 trillion into the infrastructure of this nation. That's wonderful. There were no concrete proposals of how to do that. Now, Congress in December passed a large tax cut for companies, for individuals who are among the wealthiest entities and individuals in our nation. Those tax cuts are ongoing. The tax cuts that were enacted for working families will run out in 8 years. These tax cuts will also increase our national debt by $1.5 or $2 trillion. Our national debt is already over $20 trillion. $20 trillion now, $1.5 trillion or $2 trillion for these tax cuts, another $1.5 trillion for infrastructure. Pretty soon we're talking about some serious money here, and that's just in paying down the interest on that debt. That's something we need to seriously consider. And that's something that your representatives in Congress need to be watchful of. We can no longer afford to spend money we don't have on programs that don't benefit a majority of people in this country, but benefit only a few, and that do not provide long-term solutions to the problems that face us all. And one final thing that really hit me hard was the suggestion that we need to increase our nuclear arsenal. We need to upgrade our nuclear weapons capability. I, for one, do not see the need for more nuclear weapons on top of the ones we already possess, in the hopes that just having them will make sure that we never have to use them. That's kind of convoluted logic, and it's the logic that's been put forward to boost defense spending for years and years and years, even though a great former President Eisenhower warned us in 1960 about the military-industrial complex. Just a message just popped up. Thank you, James, for checking in. So anyway, that's my takeaway from the State of the Union. I'd like to hear yours. Please chime in by texting comments, questions, calling 419-756-3529 if you'd like to be heard and have your question answered directly on the air. And I thank you all for joining in so far. This, as I said, has been an experiment. We've had variable number of viewers, and I appreciate everyone who has been watching. And at this point, I would love to have some questions. Otherwise, you're just going to have to listen to me talk. And that's already been almost a half an hour, and that's about a half an hour longer than I wanted to talk, and maybe a half an hour longer than you wanted to listen to. But I appreciate you joining in and being present as we conduct this experiment in interactive representation and response. Well, thank you, Linda. I appreciate that comment. Says, great job. And I appreciate your support. Thank you for voicing that. Anyone else watching have anything they'd like to say, pro or con? I want to hear how the State of the Union address impacted you. I'd also like to hear your comments about matters that are of concern to you and your family. And I would like to address those in future meetings such as this, and in live events as well. Excuse me. A little sip of water. I want to know what troubles you. Amy, thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. Your question is, what is your position on right to work? My position on right to work is that it is wrong. It is yet another misleading term that would tend to make you believe that those who support right to work want everyone to have equal opportunity and equal advantages. And actually, what right to work is the right of employers to tell you how and when you can work, how long you can work, what benefits you will work for, and also tell you without notice necessarily that your services are no longer needed. My position on right to work is that right to work is not a good thing for working people in this country. It's not a good thing for workers in Ohio. In fact, it was on the ballot not that long ago, and the people of Ohio voted it down. And that is exactly what should happen if Ohio's General Assembly pushes ahead with these proposed constitutional amendments to Ohio's Constitution to implement right to work regulations as part of Ohio's living constitution. I hope that answers your question, Amy, and thank you for asking. Anyone else who's watching have a question? Anne, thanks for checking in. Anne says she likes the idea about community service and payment for college tuition. What are your thoughts about a small tax on Wall Street speculators to help finance free public college tuition? I think that's a darn good idea. And I think that those who have benefited the most from the recently implemented tax cuts should be diverting some of their tax savings into community outreach programs, into community service programs, and not just into buying back shares of stock in their own companies to drive up and inflate the value of their companies on Wall Street, which is what's been happening, and to inflate the salaries of their chief executives and upper echelon workers. So that's my feeling on that. That's a good idea about a small tax on Wall Street speculators to help finance public education and skilled trades. We have a shortage of about 5 million workers in skilled trades nationwide. Not everyone wants to be a welder, not everyone wants to be a carpenter, but there are plenty of trades where skilled labor is needed, and encouraging these companies to take on young people as apprentices and in training programs would also be a good use of the tax breaks to which they are benefiting. It's nice to be getting some questions. Anyone else have anything on their mind? They're popping up on my screen. I'll address them as they do. The phone line is open and available if anyone wants to call. I don't know about all of you, but I'm kind of enjoying this. Even though I'm staring at myself and Salvador Dali looking at me over the shoulder, but Salvador Dali is one of my favorite modern artists. Sean, what are your thoughts on the drug industry being complicit in the opioid crisis? I think that the drug industry, Big Pharma, is totally complicit in the opioid crisis. The drug companies' own research showed how addictive these synthetic substances and painkillers could be, and yet the drug companies downplayed that research and in some cases didn't even mention it to the doctors. At the same time, they were urging doctors to prescribe pretty heavy pain medications for everything from a toothache to post-oral surgery to cancer pain treatment. They're all levels of pain, but not every type of pain must be smacked with a heavy narcotic or an opioid-based painkiller. That's kind of like trying to get rid of the fly buzzing around your house by lobbing hand grenades at it. Yes, Sean, the drug companies and Big Pharma are complicit in our present crisis. And several communities here in Ohio and more communities around the nation are banding together to bring lawsuits against Big Pharma. And I fully support that. I hope that answers your question. Ann had another comment. You're welcome for my response. I speak what's on my mind and how I feel about things, and thank you for receiving it well. And I agree. The wild speculation on Wall Street is firing up again. And we all know where that got us. When Wall Street firms and banks started trading mortgages and speculating on future property values, it led to one of the main contributing factors to the financial problem that we faced not so very long ago, and which took us a good 6 or 8 years to start to pull ourselves out of that ditch. Sean, you're welcome. Thank you for your question. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your comments and for you checking in. Anybody else have any questions? Any comments? Get back to the State of the Union a little bit while I'm waiting for anybody else who wants to chime in to do so. The president traditionally starts the State of the Union address with the phrase, "The state of the Union is strong." It's my belief that the state of our Union is on shaky ground for many of the reasons that I've highlighted here in my conversations with you this evening. Congress is spending money we don't have, cutting taxes for those who least need tax relief, cutting services for those who most need health, mental health, substance abuse services. The state of our union is on shaky ground, in my opinion. That is not to say that I am not hopeful for the future state of our union. I am hopeful for the state of our union because our union is not career politicians. It is not the short-sighted actions and laws and squabbles that take place in the halls of Congress, or the executive orders that fly willy-nilly from anybody's White House. The state of our union, to me, is hopeful because the state of our union is dependent upon each and every citizen in our country. And every citizen in our country is becoming more aware, more involved, more engaged, more educated in the activities of Congress, in their communities. And I applaud all citizens who do so. And in fact, I call every citizen who is engaged in community service at all levels, and who does write a letter to the editor, or does call their elected representatives, who does, John, thanks for checking in. It's nice to see you watching. These people are citizen patriots because they care about our country, the things that have been going on in our country, the direction our country has been headed and is being steered, and how these things affect not only them personally, but their families, their communities, our district, our state, and ultimately our nation and the world. And that also brings up another matter that the President touched on in the State of the Union message the other night, when he applauded the fact that he is bringing back reliance on clean coal. I personally don't believe there is any such thing. Coal, natural gas, all fossil fuels are contributing to our global warming, which many people are softening by calling it climate change. I posted a video on the fact that approximately one-fourth of the Northern Hemisphere is permafrost. And because of rising temperatures, the permafrost underground is melting. And that is releasing methane gas into the atmosphere that's being added to the carbon pollution that human activities have already contributed to climate change and warming. I urge you to look that up on my Facebook feeds, and because it's not as dire as it sounds, there's actually a rather progressive movement underway to combat that by using natural means to help nature heal itself. My point is, reliance on finite, antiquated forms of energy that can be acquired cheaply have an ongoing cost to the welfare, the well-being of our planet, and to every man, woman, child, and creature that shares our small planet. We should be investing some of our national energies and resources, financial resources, into developing ongoing, sustainable, renewable sources of energy. The president just enacted a tariff on solar panels at a time when more and more families are actually installing solar panels. We have factories here in this country that could start producing solar panels, and if that was his goal, well, okay, I can support that. But just limiting access to solar panels because they're manufactured someplace else when companies in this country would rather make money off of oil, natural gas, and coal, I don't think that's a good trade-off for our families or our future. I have 3 adult children. I have 2 adult stepchildren. I have 5 grandchildren. And I'm very concerned for their future and the future of all of us. That is part of why I undertook this effort to become a Democratic candidate to represent Ohio's 12th District, and ultimately a member of Congress to represent all the people in the 12th District, and to make your voices heard in the halls of Congress and in our nation. If elected, I will represent you as you guide me to represent you. I've appreciated your input this evening during this Facebook Live town hall event. Your comments, I think, will be viewable on the replay of this. We are approaching 7:30, which was the announced cutoff time. Oh, Amanda, thank you for checking in. A new viewer, so I guess I have to keep yakking here. But as long as people keep showing up and tuning in, I'll be here till at least 7:30. And if Amanda, John, Sean, Amy, any of you that have already put forward any questions, have any other questions, I'd gladly address those for you. And I'd also encourage everyone to visit the webpage, www.dougwilsonforohio.com. Interact there. There's a form that you can fill out in the issues section. Greg has posted a link, which will show up here, on the permafrost situation and the efforts to study and to mitigate it. I will warn you that if you start watching that link, that strap yourself in, because there's a rather startling start to it that will just take your breath away. But as it unfolds, it seems kind of grim, perhaps, but it does end with a message of hope. And I would like to end with a message of hope myself this evening. As I said, the state of our union is on shaky ground. The state of our union is on shaky ground because it is not in the best interest of those who control the majorities in both chambers of our legislative body to change anything. But change is needed, and change is being demanded by more and more people in our country. John, you have a comment. How do I feel about Franklin County Democratic Party endorsing someone last night at a time when regular people are looking for something different? John, my answer to that is, sadly, it appears that the Democratic Party, and in some cases the Republican Party, although I haven't seen any endorsements from them, have not learned the lessons of 2016 and are deciding to endorse candidates before the people actually select a candidate. An open primary should be that. It should be an open primary, in my opinion, John, where the people select the candidate they want to represent them. And then the national party, the state party, local party committees, and so forth should get behind those candidates that the people have selected and endorse the people's choices. That's a position that may not be very popular, but I don't care. Amanda has a question. And what are your thoughts on compulsory commitment to rehab facilities for drug treatment? Well, I don't know how that would be paid for, Amanda. 37 states have laws that allow this, including Ohio, and it seems to be gaining popularity as people, struggle for answers. I think if compulsory commitment to rehab facilities in lieu of jail time as an alternative, I think that is a much better solution than putting people suffering from substance abuse in prisons. So Amanda, as an alternative to rehab facilities as opposed to jail, I would go for rehab and treatment. The question is how to pay for it. My proposal is that health care for all, funded through Medicare, through workers' contributions to their health care, is a system that should be explored by Congress, and that Congress should start trying to find a solution to providing health care for all, and that's all health care, physical health care, mental health care, emotional health care, substance abuse health care, and health care for our veterans who now have a separate health care system for which, in many cases, it is overloaded and services are not readily available to many veterans. I think we need a comprehensive national system of health care for all that would address all aspects of health care for all people. John, Amanda, thank you for the question, and I hope that answered that concern. John says he's putting his children to bed, so good night, and give them a hug from me. I've met them. They're good kids. You're a good dad. And thanks for checking in. I appreciate that. We've got a few more minutes here. If anyone else has any questions or any comments, your comments will appear, I'm certain, in the replay. I won't know because I've never done this before, but I think as the questions and comments have appeared on the page, they will also be available for future viewing as this is played back on the web page, which is, or on the Facebook page. Greg wants to know if I can talk a little bit about a desire to have citizen patriots particularly passionate about various issues lend that passion to help us flesh out our positions with solid research, whether links to good articles or writing of their own. That's an excellent question, Greg. I will say that along those lines, on Tuesday I had a meeting in Columbus with the Columbus and Central Ohio branch of Alzheimer's organization. I am looking forward to developing a contact with mental health treatment organizations. And I would like to devote a future Facebook Live town hall to issues of healthcare in general and have representatives from these various healthcare organizations actually contribute, much as the viewers here this evening have been contributing their comments and questions, but make those resources available. I also have a physician from Bucyrus who is a certified expert on healthcare matters, who has actually testified before Congress, who will be available for interaction in future events. Amy says, thanks for doing this. Amy, it's been my pleasure. You know me. You know I like talking with people. For the past hour, I've been talking at myself, which is a little unnerving, but I appreciate each and every person who has watched this evening, who has submitted a question, and has submitted an opinion. And I urge you all to go to the website and give us more feedback. Give us your opinion on how this process worked for you this evening. And Greg says there will be a more detailed post on Facebook and the website soon. Greg, thank you for your efforts on directing the media for our campaign. And I appreciate that. I'd say I'd double your salary, but you volunteered your services quite kindly. So thank you. I'll still double your salary. Amy, again, you're most welcome. I hope you enjoyed this experience. I'm glad you could join and participate. And Greg says, thanks everyone for joining in tonight, and that goes doubly for me. Thank you all. We're all in this together. That is the hope for our future, is that all citizen patriots unite and put country first ahead of individual party, ahead of personal interests even, because what happens affects us all. Thank you, and good night.